Just when you thought it was safe to go back onto the intertubes, it's I Played a Thing, Revelations Persona Edition, Part 12. Dun dun, dun dun. Oh my god, it's a shark. When we left off just a few minutes ago, the gang of 5 was standing outside of the Seebeck factory, Seebeck Corporation factory rather, doing nothing of note except staring at a couple of very large doors after finding a huge industrial lift. We are trying to find Guido, who is controlling the Deva machine, which appears to have summoned all of the demons to the world. Let's go into the factory. This particular part is going to focus primarily on the factory. It has one of the most annoying musical numbers in the entire game. Now, I have been asked, as I said in the last part, to show off some of the combat, particularly now that we have a full 5-party complement. So I'm going to do a few fights here primarily. This is going to be mostly wandering around. I know that's going to annoy some people. It needs to happen in this case simply in the interests of getting my characters strong enough so that they can deal with the actual Seebeck offices, which are coming up after this particular part. Going into that sequence underpowered is a death wish. You will die. You will die horribly. You will die painfully, and you will die repeatedly. The enemies up there are, by comparison, merciless. They are much stronger, they start carrying firearms and more advanced spells, and it becomes much more difficult to actually stay alive against them. You'll also run into the first boss, not Guido, but one of his subordinates, Tiny, who will, if you are not properly prepared, kick your butt up around your eyeballs. So, back to what we're doing here. These are a number of demon dolls. That's about all I can say. Ooh, that was bad. If you see green numbers indicate that an attack didn't just not work, it actually was absorbed and healed the target. This is a great way to undo all the damage you've done in a given round. Let's just, heal them. So, let's drop the hero's persona since wind doesn't work. Mary at this point has the 4th spell of 6 she's going to get for the persona Maria. Multi-bow is lethal. Physical, non-elemental damage. All targets on screen, multiple hits. Nate is starting to come into his own with his guns. Unfortunately, you'll notice Nate has the Flying 3E, or E3 in this case. That is a paralysis spell. He's unable to attack or do anything. Mary, on the other hand, has been hit by 1 level of negative luck. This means that things that have a possibility of failure, she has a higher chance of failing. So things like misses, critical failures, which I don't think play into this game very often. She won't dodge as well, etc. Hero does a lot of damage with the rapier when he really gets going. And take a bow. Waltz inflicts a skill that I find hysterical called Guilt. I find it hysterical primarily because it's represented by a Catholic cross. Cross in general. Let me take that comment back, no offense to Catholics in general there. Guilt basically makes your character unwilling to do direct damage. They will use personas, use attack items, any of that, but they will not, under any and all circumstances, actually physically attack. You will just get the error character is too guilty. This factory is very nondescript, and it's hard to actually tell what you're supposed to be doing here without actually having a sort of lead into it. What you are looking for is 2 scrolls, or 2 switches rather, on the wall. Okay. Ooh, Confuse. Confuse is actually very useful if you know how to use it. Do that. You can spam multi-bow basically repeatedly. Mary gets so many MP back from just walking around that it's not an issue to keep using it. One of the things that Persona grant are immunities and absorptions of certain abilities. Because Nate has a persona in his default persona that can absorb all magic, it doesn't do any damage to him at all. It doesn't give him any HP back either, but it doesn't hurt him. Fail. What you also saw there on the walrus-looking thing to the left was a fear mark. If you do a lot of damage in a single hit, like Nate's multiple gunshots per round, you have the possibility of inflicting fear on an enemy. This is actually useful because feared enemies will not fight you, or they will run away, or do less damage in general. You also got to see multi-bow there, which is Mary's utterly and completely lethal early morning spell. Between Cure and multi-bow, Mary is actually really exceptionally useful. A little later, she gets a spell called Freezer that does an area of ice damage with the possibility of inflicting frozen paralysis. There's a lot of status effects, You can burn, you can be electrocuted, paralyzed, guilty, diseased. It's kind of like Earthbound, like I said in a much earlier part. Okay, cops. Cops cannot, or zombies rather, that's a zombie cop, cannot be shot. There's absolutely no way you can shoot one. They do not die from gun damage. What you can do in this case to actually get the job done much faster. Nate has a relatively useless starting persona called Voodoo, but while you're fighting the occasional zombie, Holy is actually very useful. So of course, Brad chooses to mostly shoot the zombie. Zombies do not take much in the way of physical damage, they do not take anything in the way of gunshot damage. What kicks their butt is magic. They're extremely weak to it being supernatural beings and all. And Holy knocks them out like nobody's business. When it works. It has a strong possibility of not succeeding, as was just extremely adequately demonstrated by Nate. Since it didn't work once, the odds are in its favor of not working again. ACU drop. Everyone's accuracy just plummeted. No status marker, oddly enough. You just have to assume it happened, because it did.
Help me!
5 arrows, he's still alive. I'm making a note here, but it's not a huge success. This is what I meant when some fights can go on and on and on and on. The zombie cop is not taking very much in the way of damage, so we're having to chip away at him. And unfortunately, that's taking some time here. We're almost at the 10-minute mark again, after about 3 battles. This is one of the many reasons, kids, why I wanted to edit out most of the combat sequences. It's impressive to watch, particularly for 1996, but it really doesn't give you much value. Mary goes up, Mary's persona goes up, Brad goes up. Awesome. Mary will very quickly, if you're not careful, squirrel away from everybody else because she has Freezer and multi-bow. They both give her the ability to just knock enemies down. Before we hit the end of the marker here, what I'm going to do is show off the switches we're trying to get to. Hopefully I won't get into any combat between here and there. Oh, that's bad. I'll be back. No, I'll show it to you. That's a combat from behind, or what some of us will call butt rape. It actually flips your form around into the reverse direction. Now, the problem with this situation is that Mark and the hero have very short-range weaponry. They can't use their firearms from the back, and they can't melee from the back either. So, you can flip the form, but this counts as a full turn, and you can't fight, do anything, you have to defend. Nate gets to attack simply because he didn't move. He was already in the center. It's one of the reasons I do kind of like the diamond formation, because he doesn't get penalized. He didn't really move. Mary cannot use her bow from the front. The enemies are too close. So we'll finish this fight up. I'll rock'em sock'em with a little bit of wind and such. Hit him with the shotgun. Now, you may notice sometimes when you attack like that, nothing happens. That's just a simple no effect. If you don't see numbers, there was no damage at all. Negative, positive, or anything else. Not that there's anything other than negative and positive, it was null. Null damage is not as bad as absorption, but it means that you wasted your attack anyway. Whatever it was you were trying to kill, well, you didn't. 2, 3. Nate's gun, actually everybody's gun, determines how many shots per round they're allowed to pull off. With later guns and much better ammunition, Nate is capable of pulling off 7, 8 shots in a round. It's kind of really impressive. We are way past the 10-minute mark here, so I'm going to call this right now without actually doing this level up, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with I Played a Thing, Part 13. Have a great one.